I am Rachel Humphrey with It's Personal Stories, a hospitality podcast. We are a nonprofit dedicated to empowering personal success within the hospitality industry. I'm super excited to be joined today on the show with Dr. Leonard Jackson from Kennesaw State University, and we are going to jump right in. So, Dr. Jackson, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me.
Well, as everyone knows who listens regularly, one of the things that I really love about the hospitality industry is how unique everyone's path is. You and I can have incredibly different journeys to leadership and yet still end up in hospitality industry leadership. So tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us about maybe some of those pivotal steps, but really who got to you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my personal journey into this amazing industry started on the sunny island of Jamaica, where I was born. I started working in the industry in 1984 at a French boutique style hotel. And I worked there throughout my entire high school. And I started off in the back of the house. And as I got older and taller, I was moved to the front of the house. I continued my journey in the industry when I moved from Jamaica to Toronto, Canada, and started college there. And while I was working in college, I worked for several different companies. And once I finished college, I worked for Fairmont Hotels and Resorts, Hyatt Hotels and Resorts. And like most professionals, when I started college, I was also working in the industry. So I was able to pursue all my degrees while I was also working in the industry. One of the beauties of our industry is that, hotels are open 365 days, 24 hours. So for college students, you can always find employment in the industry. A pivotal moment in my career that led to my current position in academia came when one of my professors, Stephen Burr, he encouraged me to pursue a career in academia. I had no interest in academia to start off, but he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself, and he encouraged me to continue my education and head into academia. So that was a very pivotal moment for me. And following his advice, I was able to pursue several degrees. I ended up with 8 degrees,
Oh my goodness.
8 degrees overall. But it all started with someone who saw something in me that I didn't know I had. And following that journey, I've worked before my current position here at Kennesaw State University. I worked for leading academic institutions such as Central Florida, the Rosen College, studied at Oklahoma State University, and gained the necessary academic skill set that is required for one in academia.
Well, that's incredible. And so many different leadership themes that I'm looking forward to exploring in a little bit more detail. One of the ones I want to start with is you touched on the fact that you've really been in this industry since you were a kid growing up.
Yes.
What is a skill that you learned maybe in that first job you had at the boutique hotel that you still use in your role today? And then what is one skill that as you were progressing through different roles, maybe you didn't learn in an academic setting, but you knew you had to set out to learn it on your own if you were going to be successful in your role?
Yes, absolutely. So quite often, where you start in your career can be so important in terms of how it shapes you as a person, but also as a professional. And I was very fortunate in that the owners of the hotel had a mantra: there's no substitute for excellence. And all employees were required to uphold a mantra of excellence. So that has imbued in me just a discipline that whatever endeavors I undertake, I should always aspire to execute it at the highest level of quality. So as a professional, I've always looked back at how important working at that resort was for how it has, in terms of how it has shaped me as a professional. The owner, she has since passed. There was always the notion that average is never enough. We will never be average. We always want to be the best. In terms of, something I wish I had learned earlier. I was taught that my work should speak for itself.
Mm.
And I was always that worker who was always relying on my work to speak for itself. So, one thing I wish I had learned was yes, you should always aspire for excellence, but you should also let your boss know what you're doing.
That's such good advice.
Yes, I think it's important. Don't assume that your manager, your supervisor, your boss, they know exactly all the tasks that you're accomplishing. You don't necessarily need to brag or boast, but just make sure that they're aware of what you're doing.
Well, there's no substitute for excellence is certainly a great lesson to have carried throughout your career and really advocating for yourself. I think you're right. It doesn't mean that you are bragging or that you are taking away from the work you're doing. You're just making sure that those, everybody has a lot going on. So making sure that your supervisors or your management knows what you're doing is really important. Thank you for sharing that. That's such good advice. You
Absolutely.
talked earlier about having a mentor that saw something in you that you did not see in yourself and how it really changed the trajectory of your career for you. That's actually something I relate to. And I've talked a lot about having somebody see things and really not even just encouraging me, but trying to, convince me that I had either skills or roles or something that I just wasn't seeing. Talk about the role of mentors, allies, and champions. How do you think one seeks them out? What do you think the role of that can be for students, for rising leaders, but also for seasoned leaders who may need that extra support system?
Yes. So mentors are very important because they shape how we behave. They shape how we pursue excellence. And importantly, how we carry ourselves. So, my first mentors were my parents, right? So, the value system that I have as it relates to my personal life and my professional endeavors as well were shaped by my parents. So their value system was one of integrity, one of ethics, and all my decisions or all decisions that I make, I'm always ensuring that such decisions are grounded in ethical principles. In terms of champions, I think they're very important. So I perceive a champion as someone who's going to vouch for you behind your back, right? They're going to stand up for you. They're going to advocate for you when you're not present. So I've always encouraged my students to ensure that, yes, you can have mentors, but also carry yourself in a manner so that others can become your champion without you knowing. And for me, there has been several champions in my career. It's really hard to single out one, but several people have advocated for me without me knowing. And it's all about how I carry myself in a professional manner at all times.
Well, I like the differentiation too between mentors and champions, but that if you continue to behave when you're not intending to be establishing those relationships, that people will see who you are and want to champion for you. So that's great advice.
Absolutely.
You talked earlier about the personal mantra of the resort where you got your career start, and also that your parents established in you a very high ethical standard. What is the personal brand or the personal mantra that you use as your personal guiding North Star, whether it be in career decisions, personal decisions? How do you look at yourself in a way that allows you to be consistent in your decision making?
So for me, how I'm consistent in my decision making is it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. All of my decisions are grounded and centered on ethical discipline and ethical discipline. Rachel, I want to make sure that whatever decisions I make can withstand any scrutiny. So I've always tried to ensure that my personal or professional biases are not interjected into any decisions that I make. It's always about the task that we need to accomplish. So all decisions that I make are task focused, people focused, and they all surround the pursuit of excellence.
Excellent. Well, one of the things that I have found very interesting as I've interviewed hundreds of guests over the last couple years is this recurring theme of curiosity, probably a word I would not have used to describe leadership or even myself when I started on this journey. But I'm interested, I'm guessing someone with 8 degrees has an element of curiosity to you. Would you describe yourself as a curious person, and how do you really satisfy that drive for curiosity, if so? And then if so, what is one thing that you're very curious about today?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I am very curious by nature. So I have an insatiable appetite and hunger for learning. And I started, as I mentioned earlier, in this industry in 1984. And I've seen how the industry has changed and evolved. And my insatiable appetite for learning has helped me keep abreast with the changes in the industry. I didn't mention also that I have about 14 professional certifications. So every time there's a significant change in the industry, we do have certifications that we can pursue to keep us abreast. So I've pursued those because I've always believed, I believe as well, Rachel, that to teach one must learn, right? So as an educator, my curiosity for learning has served me well. It has served my stakeholders well because I'm learning and I'm imparting the knowledge that I gather onto my students so that they can be better individuals first, but also great talent for our industry.
That's incredible. And the certificates on top of all of the degrees, I imagine that
Correct.
continues forward, that you're never going to stop being curious and never stop learning there. Dr.
That's
Jackson,
correct.
you and I first met, I believe, when you were the founding director for the Michael Leven School of Management, Entrepreneurship, and Hospitality at Kennesaw State. And in that role over the years, you have an opportunity to impact truly, thousands of lives, the students, the other faculty, your colleagues, and all these people, about the future of the hospitality industry, about the industry itself, the love and the passion that comes along with it, the career opportunities. What are you telling students today about career development? What are they learning from a leadership standpoint? What are you focusing on with them? Because we can all learn the substantive matter of different majors, of different courses, of different roles. But what do you think some of the important leadership attributes are to be teaching the future rising leaders in the industry?
Well, thanks for that question, Rachel, because one of the things I pride myself in is that I spend a lot of time working one-on-one and in group settings with our students. And the things I try to impart on my students is one, the importance of building and fostering professional relationships. Our industry is intricately connected, and I tell them all the time, never burn any bridges because we're so well connected. On the other side, I also tell them or share with them the importance of building their personal brands and protecting their personal brands. And each one is going to have their own personal brand, but is this the brand that you want to portray? Is what you're doing representing your personal brand? And as I mentioned earlier, because we're such a connected industry, if you have a brand that's not a solid brand, you can destroy your career very quickly. So I also, going back to this whole mantra of excellence, I also tell them that they should always strive for excellence, and there are no substitutes for professional excellence.
I love that the such an important lesson that you learned at the start of your career, you're now getting to share with others as they begin to start theirs. I think that your former mentor would probably be very pleased to know that she was impacting future generations to come. You touched on something really important about building relationships, and I wanted to develop that a little bit further. I'm imagining that in your current role at the Leven School, relationships help with internships, with jobs, with introductions to mentors, to faculty advisors, to different, you just came back from a conference, to different conferences. How do you set out, and how have you over the course of your career, to actually build those relationships? Because I think you and I, while very different, have the ability to lean into our own personal attributes in how we build relationships, in how we network with others. So, how do you set out to build those relationships that might be suited more to your individuality or your personality?
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. So for me, I see relationships as living, breathing things that have to be nourished. You have to just think about. I'll use the analogy of a plant, right? A beautiful flower, right? So if you look at this beautiful flower, if it's not nurtured, if it's not watered, it will die. The same thing happens with relationships. So I try my very best to maintain and foster the relationships that I have, because those relationships usually lead to other relationships as well. So I spend time. As you mentioned, we do have a lot of industrial partners that we work closely with, and I make sure I make time to visit with our industrial partners. So I will take time to go visit with them at their place of employment. If that's not possible, I will reach out periodically to through email just to check in and see how are you doing. So yes, there's a business relationship, but all of the partners that I work with, there's also a personal element as well. So I'm first interested in how they're doing, and secondary, how is the business doing, or how is the business coming along? And of course, I'm always offering my assistance if I can offer such assistance. And I must say, those relationships, like a plant, right? A lot of plants have fruits and seeds, and those fruits you can reap, and you can plant the seeds, right? So because I've always fostered those relationships, I'm pleased to say that a lot of the relationships that I've grown and fostered started with my time in the industry, and I've left the industry 24 years ago. But those relationships that I established have borne amazing fruits, and I keep reaping those fruits today. So it's very important to build the relationships, treat them like a plant, maintain the relationships, and they will spread into or and multiply into an inordinate amount of relationships.
Well, the fact that you have such deep relationships so many years after you left the
Yes.
functional roles within the industry is really a testament to how nurturing you were to those relationships early on. When you're talking to your students who either may be more nervous about the introductions or about how to go about that, or early careerists at the same time, are there ways that you can recommend to start off if maybe that isn't your personality, or you're a little bit more nervous about how to start building those relationships?
Oh, absolutely. And I get that question quite often from students who are they're introverts, right, by nature. So I usually tell them just build one relationship at a time. Build that relationship one at a time, maintain that relationship, that professional relationship. And over time, you will start to grow in your level of comfort. You will start to grow in your level of confidence. And over time, before you know it, you are going to have, I'll use the plant analogy, you're going to have a forest of relationships.
Hmm.
Most people see me now as being an extrovert. But when I started off, I was an introvert. And today, most people, when I tell them, hey, I was as shy as a leaf blowing in the wind, they don't believe it. And I keep telling them, yes, I was. So I always tell my students, just start off with one relationship, build that relationship, foster that relationship, and it will multiply into an inordinate amount of relationships.
I like the advice too of the recurring nature of it, that you have to continue to foster it. A lot of people, I think you meet someone once and then you have a relationship, but there's such an aspect of it, of that continued nourishing. Or if we're looking at the garden, if you're not
Yes,
continuing to water those relationships, then it's going to be hard to develop genuine relationships there. So I think that that's
absolutely.
really great advice. One of the things that has been most fun for me with this interview process is that for some people like you who I've known for quite a long time now, I always learn something I didn't know. And I'm going to expand it a little bit bigger. But what is one thing that everyone who sees Dr. Jackson doesn't know about you? Or what is a misperception that maybe when you hear how someone has described you, you're like, wow, that is surprising. Because other than maybe the introvert extrovert, since you've already given that one as an example.
So one misperception is that I'm always in a suit.
Okay.
Everyone, they joke about it actually. So my students, they'll joke, and my peers, they'll joke sometimes and ask me, "Do you sleep in a suit?" Right?
I love that.
Because I'm always in a suit. So
Do you?
that's it's as far away from reality. So I tell my students, this is my personal brand. When I'm at work, this is my personal brand. But outside, I'm an avid outdoors person. I love fishing. I love gardening. I love farming. So I tell my students all the time and my peers, if you saw me when I'm not at work, you would not recognize me. Baseball hat, cargo pants, camouflage shirt. That's me. That's me on the outdoors when I'm outdoors. So yeah. So that's misperception. One thing that someone might not know about me is that I speak German. I speak German. I had an opportunity in 1989 to study German in Basel, Switzerland, and I took advantage of that opportunity. And so I studied in Basel, Switzerland, but also spent some time in Germany as well to expand my knowledge of the German language. So that's something that someone who meets me would never know.
I should have invited the cargo pant baseball cap, Dr.
Yeah,
Jackson, to the interview. People would not have believed it. You are right.
that is true. That is true.
You know, the
Yes.
hospitality industry is incredibly resilient. We have a million examples of being able to show that, but so really are so many of our established leaders and the people who've been in the industry for a long time. There's not one of us who has not had an oops moment in our career where we really thought, this is the end, I'm going to be fired, or this mistake, I can't come back from this one. Can you think of an example of a time in your career where you made a mistake, it felt in that moment like it was catastrophic, how you handled it with your supervisor or your managers and maybe what you've learned from it?
Yeah, Rachel, this is one example that I actually use with my students. So early in my career, I had the opportunity to evaluate two PMS systems for a company I work for. And we had about five, and we had narrowed it down to two. And we made a decision to go with one, PMS A over PMS B. I contacted both vendors and told PMS A, we're going to go with your property management system, and PMS B, I'm sorry, great demonstration, but it does not serve our needs at this point in time. I did a follow-up. I was going to follow up by email, and I drafted two emails in Microsoft Word. One for the accept, one for the reject. Someone came into my office as I was about to send the email, and I was distracted. And I sent the emails to the wrong person.
Oh my goodness.
Accept got reject, reject got accept. You can just imagine the embarrassment that I felt, but also how upset both vendors were. You know, one was happy and one was upset, right? So I learned a lot from it. The lesson I learned was that, take time before you send an email, but also when you're a leader, you're going to have competing tasks that require immediate attention. Learn to prioritize and make sure that you are dealing with the circumstance at hand and not multitasking to the point where you make these mistakes. Where my boss was concerned, he thought it was hilarious. He laughed at me for sure, and because no serious damage was done, but potentially, I was very embarrassed by this experience.
Well, I think you're right. We all tend to take on so much at one time
Yes,
that that ability to really lean in and focus on one task at a time is such an important lesson. And
absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing that. You know, one thing I'm curious about, because while in your early talk about your personal journey, you said you've been with several different companies, you've had a lot of
Yes.
different roles, and much of that then led to your career in academia. But as we go from role to role, either within a company or we switch companies, there are skills that we take with us that we then can further develop, and we can continue to evolve them. There are other skills we have to learn new. How do you take what you've learned in one role and really apply it to the next, but in a way that continues to expand your entire skill set or your entire leadership journey?
Yeah, so I've been very fortunate. Thank you for that question. I've been very fortunate in that I've had the privilege of working in all the major sectors. And of course, these various experiences have imbued the importance of paying close attention to my customers, both internal and external. So even my current role as an academic program director, I see the hospitality industry as my customer, and my students are my product. So the lessons I learned from my time in industry of paying close attention and listening to my customer, I still practice it as well in academia. So I spend a lot of time talking to the industry professionals, my industry board, and their feedback have helped to shape our curriculum, our activities that we have, co-curricular activities in the program. And as a result, we do prepare students who are ready to take their place in this industry. So again, all of those experiences have imbued that insatiable desire to constantly talk to my customers, both internal and external, to ensure that we are serving their needs.
That's such a great thing. The art of listening and using
Yes.
that to further develop. One thing that you and I both care a lot about is that the hospitality industry continue to be diverse at all levels, including the leadership levels. And you have such an impact on the next generation of students. What are you seeing from an industry standpoint, and what can we all do to make sure that we are striving for that same goal?
Um, For me, it's from an industry standpoint in terms of diversity, etc. We just need to ensure that we are preparing future leaders who are going to represent society as a whole. So we should try our very best to prepare individuals from all different backgrounds and get them ready for leadership positions. And when those leadership positions arise, they should all be treated fairly in terms of getting access to these positions.
I love that. I love that. Well, we appreciate all of your leadership there for sure. As we wrap up now, I want to wrap up with just two final questions. One, which is my absolute favorite question to ask. I think for all of us, we are works in progress. And part of that is reflecting on where our career has been, where our personal life has been. If you look back at young Leonard Jackson in Jamaica, what would you tell yourself what would you tell that young man that either might have changed the way that your path was, made it easier? What is one thing you wish you knew then that you know today?
I wish I had learned to relax more.
Hmm.
I was so focused on my career, my education, which was going to lead to a career, that if I believe at the time, if I spent time engaging in activities that were not geared towards my education, at the time I felt I was wasting time. So I was very intensely focused on my education because that was going to be my vehicle to get me to the career that I wanted. So I wish I'd learned to relax more. But then again, if I did, perhaps I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, that's true. It's incredible, actually, how many people I hear tell a similar piece of advice to their younger self. I think so many of us,
Yes.
you just have that early drive, but you're right. That may be what propels you to where you are today. Well, as we wrap up, you've given so many incredible pieces of experience from your leadership journey and advice to others. But keeping in mind our motto of empowering personal success, what is one final piece of advice you'd share with our audience?
Sure, thank you. I believe that the pursuit of excellence is an elusive quest. It's a journey that has peaks and valleys. And my advice is when you're on the peak, enjoy the peak, but spend some time to prepare for possible valleys. And when you're in the valley, understand that there is only one way, and it's up. So never give up, never despair. Just have a lot of fortitude and confidence and belief in yourself that you're going to get back to that peak. And remember, as I said, the pursuit of excellence, it's an elusive quest. Excellence is not a destination. We're always striving for that.
Well, I think the peaks and valleys is such a great thing to
Yes.
say, and so important for everyone to hear that there are highs and there are lows, and they will all be part of who shapes us into who we are. Well, I appreciate you joining me so very much. To those listening at home, we know you have a lot of ways you can spend your time, so we appreciate you taking some time to join us. Dr. Jackson, I am incredibly grateful for your time and the wisdom you've shared today, but also for all of the work you're doing, not just in the hospitality industry in general, but raising our next generation of hospitality industry leaders. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
You're most welcome. My pleasure indeed.
And we hope everyone will head on over to itspersonalstories.com to hear from other industry leaders who have likewise shared their personal stories, their personal journeys, and their leadership insights as well. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.